being held on behalf of Defend Our Juries and Prisoners for Palestine. My name is Jennifer Nadel, and I'm a journalist and the co-founder of Compassion in Politics, and I will be your host for this morning. Just to be clear before we get started, this meeting is not intended to invite support for any action, but simply to provide information to you as journalists. I'm hoping you will have seen the press release that went out at around 10 this morning, but in case you haven't, we're going to be posting a copy of that in the chat. And the purpose of this conference is to give you details of the actions that will be taking place in 18 towns and cities across the United Kingdom in November, and to give you a chance to hear directly from some of those who will be taking part. These actions are designed to increase the pressure on the Home Secretary to restore fundamental rights and freedoms ahead of the judicial review of Palestine Action, which starts on the 25th of November. So the format for today's press conference will be the same for those who've been before as others. There'll be a 3 to 4 minute opening remark from each speaker, followed by the opportunity for you to ask questions. So feel free to load your questions in the chat whenever they occur to you. And just to reiterate again, this is not a meeting intended to invite support for action. So without further ado, I will pass over to Dr. Clive Dolphin, who is a spokesperson for Defend Our Juries. Clive.
So good morning. Thank you all for coming along to this press briefing this morning. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what is happening and why it is happening. So we're talking about the Lift the Ban protest or series of protests, and this is happening because of two fundamental issues. It's because of the oppression by the current government of basic civil rights, by right to protest. There is a protest group, Palestine Action, who have been prescribed, and because they have been prescribed, any mention of them potentially risks a prison sentence up to 14 years if you go up to section 12. The other thing, and the most important thing, is because the British people oppose genocide. Let me just say that again: the British people oppose genocide. That's what fundamentally all of this is about. What's going to be happening over the course of November is that across 18 cities, across England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, across all of the United Kingdom, there are going to be a series of protests. They are happening on different dates across November, and all of this is leading up to the judicial review, which is going to take place at the Royal Courts of Justice on the 25th through to the 27th of November. Now, at that judicial review, we're going to hear evidence presented as to whether that ban was imposed lawfully or not. I think the debate about whether it was moral or not, I think that has already been won. The vast majority of British people say writing 7 words on a piece of paper is not an act of terrorism. But we'll hear the legal argument. In addition to this, there is a rolling hunger strike, which is going to take place, involving people who have been arrested for actions at Bryce Norton and actions at the Filton Elbit factory in Bristol. It's important to understand the people who were originally arrested in Bristol for the actions at Elbit Systems in Filton. They have been in prison for over a year, and yet they have faced no charges. They were originally arrested under the Terrorism Act, where police found that they could not sustain those terrorist accusations. They went back to ordinary legislation. In spite of that, the prosecution continues to put forward this preposterous suggestion that there is some terrorism link. What we are saying is those people should not be kept in prison prior to their trial for such an extended period of time. So those are the things that are going to be happening. The actions at multiple cities, the rolling hunger strike. And I'll remind you again what all of this is about. This is about, here in the UK, people having the right to protest, the right to speak up to government when they think the government has got something wrong. And fundamentally, this is about the fact that the British people oppose genocide. They do not want to be complicit in war crimes. They do not want to see people starved to death in an artificial famine. British people oppose genocide. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Clive. And next up, we have Francesca Nadine from Prisoners for Palestine. Francesca.
Thank you. So yes, I'm here on behalf of Prisoners for Palestine. Our group includes some of the people that are in prison for allegedly taking action with Palestine Action, but there are others that have been in prison since then that are not part of, weren't part of Palestine Action. Excuse me. So what they all have in common is they all allegedly took action to stop the arms exports from this country to Israel to continue the genocide. And why a hunger strike? They have exhausted all legal avenues. There's a clear government abuse of power. All these legal avenues so far have not been successful, so they feel they have no other choice but to take drastic action for justice. All the demands are completely reasonable and a response to the different aspects of political repression that the prisoners are facing right now. The letter that we presented to the Home Office last week is now on our website. If anyone wants to take a look at that, we'll be sending out a press release later today as well with more details. And of course, the Home Office has ignored our letter, and that's why the hunger strike will be going ahead starting on the 2nd of November, which is Balfour Day. So I'll just go over briefly the demands. There are 5 demands. Number 1, no censorship. So all of the prisoners have been suffering from constant censorship in the prison, which is breaking all the prison rules. The letters, phone calls, visits, emails, even books have been blocked, gone missing. Hundreds of letters have gone missing. And it's just not acceptable. There's clear political motivation behind this. Next is bail. So, as we've said many times, none of the prisoners meet the threshold for being held on remand. It should be used only in exceptional circumstances. The only exceptional circumstances here is the political persecution of the prisoners by the state. They're also being held over the custody time limit, in some cases indefinitely for up to 2 years. Number 3, the right to a fair trial. So we can only have a fair trial if all of the documents about the undisclosed meetings between the British state, Elbit Systems, and Israeli officials need to be released unredacted. This evidence is essential for all of these people to have a fair trial. The next demand, number 4, is to drop the terror link in all of these trials and to deprescribe Palestine Action. So there's no evidence for this supposed terror link. That's clear to everybody. And it's clear to us as well that the first people that were arrested, the first Filton prisoners, were arrested as the first step in a coordinated plan to have the justification later on to prescribe the entire organisation. And it's no coincidence that just after the prescription of Palestine Action, September 2025 was the 2nd highest month on record for British arms sales to Israel. So they've conveniently got these people out of the way, and now they can sell all the arms they want to. The last demand is to shut Elbit down. So there are still these arms factories operating in this country, Israeli-owned arms factories. And not only that, now the government is about to give a £2 billion contract to Elbit Systems to train British soldiers in this country. And in that moment, they'll become operational partners of the British Army. This is completely unacceptable, and we need to pressure the government to stop this from happening. So, as I said, there's no response from the government, and since the demands remain unmet, it is now the moment for us to escalate. So, first announcement we have today that we haven't spoken about before, it will be a rolling start to this hunger strike. That means not everybody will start at the same time. The exact numbers of the prisoners will be announced in due course. Obviously, for the safety of the prisoners, we can't talk about that right now because we know that the prison will continue to harass, to mistreat, and to repress them even more than they have been doing already. The other announcement that we have today, and this is why we're here with Defend Our Juries, is that we will be working alongside Defend Our Juries as part of this escalation to shine a light on the trial and on the judicial review and on the abusive hearing process. So this idea that I've heard certain politicians talking about, that the Defend Our Juries campaign, which is people writing words on placards, and the people that have allegedly took action to shut down these arms factories are somehow different and somehow can be divided into good and bad protesters is absolutely false. And we will show a united front to make sure everybody understands that we're all fighting the same cause, and that is to stop the use of these terror laws to repress dissent and to stop the genocide. This is a historic moment, and it's up to the government to choose how to react. We will continue to escalate, and we call on the public to support the hunger strikers in any way possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Francesca. And next up, we were to have had Juliet Stevenson, who is a supporter of Defend Our Juries, as well as an ambassador for Amnesty International and, of course, an award-winning actor. But unfortunately, just before the press conference began, we got word that she is sick with a stomach bug. So we are going to get a quote from her as soon as we're able, which we'll distribute to all journalists of what she would have said, so that you still have a line from her. And I'm sorry for the last minute nature of that change. However, our next speaker is Claire Hinchcliffe, whose daughter is Zoe Rogers. And Zoe is one of the Filton 24 who is being held without trial, as you just heard from Francesca. So Claire, over to you.
Thank you, and thanks for allowing me to speak today. So yes, my daughter Zoe, 22 years old, is one of the Filton 24. And of the 24, she's one of the 6 who was arrested inside the Elbit Systems facility in Filton, Bristol. It hasn't been said so far. Elbit Systems is Israel's largest weapons manufacturer and a firm partner with the Israel Defence Force. So the 6 were arrested inside the facility. They managed to get inside, and they had damaged equipment, including the killer quadcopter drones seen used by Israel. These drones were packaged up, ready for export, they believed, to Israel. So they were arrested on site. Later on, 18 others were rounded up and arrested and charged in connection with the same action, and they became the Filton 24. What's really important to understand about the Filton 24 is that they were the first group of Palestine actionists to face counter-terror powers. This is back in August 2024, and it was a first experimental step. Oh, I'm so sorry, I've got a fire alarm. Can we switch to another speaker and come back to me? Sorry.
No problem, Claire. Of course we can. Let's switch to Steve Masters, who is an RAF veteran and was arrested for sign holding. Steve, sorry to come to you a bit earlier than
Yeah, that's okay. Hello, friends. I'm Steve Masters, a veteran. I never imagined the day would come when I would have to protest my own government against a genocide. And this comes after dedicating 19 years of my life to service in the Royal Air Force, for which I swore an oath to protect the values of this nation. And that's why in this past September, I chose to stand and protest against the prescription of Palestine Action, because the actions of our government, in my view, made us complicit in genocide. Since December 23, Royal Air Force and its outsourced contractor have flown over 600 missions over or near Gaza. And we're told that these flights by Shadow R1 spy planes from RAF Akrotiri are solely the purpose of locating hostages. But what's the reality on the ground? We know that these aircraft are gathering real-time intelligence, and then once that data is shared with our allies, the UK loses all control over how the information is used. And when those spy flights coincide with major military assaults, and when our government refuses all parliamentary scrutiny, we are not just standing by. We're providing material and military support for actions that we should, as a country, be condemning. It's not an act of humanitarian aid, it's a military assistance. And our complicity is not restricted to spy flights. And by standing by as the genocide unfolded before our eyes, it's rooted in our deep financial ties to Israel, largest arms manufacturer, Elbit Systems. Since 2012, Elbit has secured 25 public contracts in the UK, totaling over £355 million. Elbit is not a passive partner. Its technology, like the Hermes 450 drone, which served as a template for the UK's own Watchkeeper drones, has been battle tested in Gaza. And now the government wants to go deeper. The Ministry of Defence is currently preparing to sign a new contract for a massive £2.7 billion that would make Elbit a strategic partner responsible for training 60,000 British troops every year. So I have to ask, why is our government preparing us to use our taxpayers' money to fund the machinery of a conflict? Why is it deepening its reliance on a company that profits directly from the destruction in Gaza? This contract is a political endorsement, a military insurance policy, and a moral disgrace. I demand that this contract be scrapped immediately and demand an end to our financial entanglement with this cycle of violence. And the final and most alarming sign of complicity is the government's response to peaceful protest. When citizens stand up and take direct action against this industrial level of complicity, they are met with the full force of the state. As we've heard, there are many prisoners held on remand in this country for non-violent direct action against Elbit and other firms. They face up to 2 years behind bars already on remand without conviction, a clear breach of the pre-trial custody limits, and they were arrested under counter terror legislation, demonstrating an unprecedented and disproportionate attack on the right to protest. These are not terrorists, they're citizens who dared to interrupt the production of military equipment. Their imprisonment is a tool of intimidation designed to silence all of us who question the government's close relationship with the arms trade. I'm not just asking the government to change its policy, I'm demanding that it ends its active participation in the genocide. We need transparency regarding the spy flights and the intelligence shared. I call on the MOD to immediately cancel the £2.7 billion contract. And I demand that our political leaders show some moral courage and uphold the principles of democracy by releasing the prisoners who acted on their conscience, and also to deprescribe Palestine Action. If I remain silent, I too would be complicit. And as a veteran, I feel it is my duty to take action. Join me and many others as we challenge this increasingly authoritarian government. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Steve. And we'll go back, if you're up for it, Claire, to Claire, whose daughter Zoe is one of those being held.
Yes, and just to reassure you, it was a fire alarm test, not an actual fire, and it's all finished now. Just to pick up what I was explaining about what's important and unique about the Filton 24 was that they were the first group of Palestine actionists to face these counter-terror powers back in August 2024 as a first experimental step towards a prescription which is now in force. So they were, as has been said, they were charged with ordinary criminal offences, but with a so-called terrorist connection. And this, by the way, is only legally possible because of the UK's overly broad definition of terrorism, which means that mere property damage with a political aim can be called terrorism. And this urgently needs to be reformed. So in the case of the Filton 24, these draconian counter-terror powers meant that they were, some including my daughter, were held without charge for 7 days incommunicado. My daughter was unable to ring anyone, to tell anyone where she was. It meant that they were violent pre-dawn raids by police, up to 20 officers at a time, breaking down doors, entering family homes, handcuffing family members in their beds. Sometimes they were armed. One of the Filton 24 was arrested in his underpants with 4 guns pointing at his head. And then we also have seen, with the use of this terrorist connection, just the smear of terrorism, this powerful emotive word, with police statements to the press claiming that they were violent and carrying weapons, before evidence had been heard by a jury, prejudicing their trial. And also the terrorist connection, that means a much, potentially much longer sentence after they've been tried if they are convicted. But one of the worst effects, as been talked about before, is the blanket denial of bail. And we had last year 4 UN experts wrote to our government about the Filton case, condemning this use of bail across the board, all 24. When I saw Zoe in Westminster's Magistrate Court in August last year, having not seen or heard from her for 7 days, I expect to see her being given bail. She was a young person with no previous convictions and good character references. So according to the Bail Act, she should have been allowed to go home. She was not. She's now, and watching her being led out of that courtroom after being denied bail was one of the most traumatic moments of my life. She's now had 15 months in prison. And as it's been said before, the legal pre-trial custody time limit is 6 months. This is possible because of the terrorist connection. And some of the Filton 24 will wait nearly 2 years in prison for their trials. So it's really important to speak out about the Filton 24 specifically. They are a test case. They are at the heart of this battle against prescription and an increasingly authoritarian government. And ultimately, who does it serve to use counter-terror powers against these activists? It does not serve national security or democracy or human rights. It only serves the government's strategic relationship with Israel and its lucrative arms trade. The freedom of my daughter and of her brave fellow activists is being sacrificed on the altar of our government's relationship with a genocidal state. Shame on them. So next steps and important dates. On the 12th of November, the Filton 24 barristers will argue that there's been an abuse of process in this case. They will hold the government to account for publicly influencing the trial with ministers, including Yvette Cooper, discussing evidence from their case and making personal judgments on television, making a fair trial impossible. If that does not succeed, the first trial for the Filton 24 begins with the 6 arrested in Filton, including my daughter Zoe, on the 17th of November at Woolwich Crown Court. That's a really important date. It could last up to 7 weeks, the trial. This is a really important test case, the first trial of the Filton 24. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thanks so much for joining us. And now we're going to go to Mansour Adafi, who is the Guantanamo Project Coordinator at CAGE. And CAGE is the negotiating partner for the hunger strikers alongside Prisoners for Palestine, and who led the mass hunger strikes at Guantanamo.
Assalamu alaikum. Hello, everyone. Honestly, it's kind of sad being here today to talk about this issue. So I work for CAGE as Guantanamo Project Coordinator, and as you know, CAGE has been working on these cases since it was established in 2003, and it has been advocating for prisoners who have been in prison, what they call the first global war on terror, or under the counter-terrorism laws that now being weaponized against civilians. Listening to Claire today reminded me of my own mother. I was 18 years old, sold to the CIA as Al-Qaeda General Night Insider, imprisoned in Guantanamo for around 15 years as the worst of the worst terrorist vicious killers, released without indefinite detention, spent a few months in the CIA black site, tortured. All of that was under the name of counter-terrorism. After 15 years, they said it was a mistaken identity. And according to one of the Guantanamo lawyers, that around 98% of the prisoners of Guantanamo were innocent. They have no connection to terrorism. So when I listened today talking about the Filton 24, when 9/11 happened, I didn't think they have even come to this life yet. And before then, the terror law or the counter-terrorism law was established by the United States, and Guantanamo was created. From what I see now, what happened to the Filton 24, being Guantanamo is being embedded in the UK prison system. Because Guantanamo is not a prison. Guantanamo is a lawless place. It's an idea, it's a symbol of torture, injustice, lawlessness, and indefinite detention. So I think the UK government, instead of creating Guantanamo separately, they will embed it in the prison system, where the Felton 24. When I look at these kids, I mean, what they did, I think they were taught in school to stand for what's right. You know, for justice. That's what they did exactly. They have been taught their entire life by their parents, by family and community. What they did, they took action. They tried to save life. They couldn't stand watching children, people, men, women being starved to death, burned alive, and so on. They took action. You know, do you think breaking a window or a door or damaging equipment can be an act of terrorism? I mean, for me, like, it doesn't make any sense. I haven't seen a single case that UK took against those British citizens who went to Palestine and fought alongside the IDF. They haven't. None of them have a case of terrorism. So we need. I'm like, now I'm questioning, what is terrorism? It keeps evolving, it's changing. So the Felton 24, I'm involving in their case. They're going to, some of them were going on hunger strike on this next month. And what I'm calling you now, what's next? You will be next. You, because they are the test, they are the first. The terror law is being weaponized, misused and abused to silence people, distribute your right. They don't make anyone safe. It doesn't matter who's in power, labor, conservative, whatsoever. No, they are guarding and protecting their own interest. You know, the manufacturing machinery that manufactures weapons to commit war crime in Palestine and so on. What's next? These factories tomorrow is going to create drones to target you in your own home. When Claire was described how the Felton 24 were arrested home, under bans, you know, guns in their heads, what they have done, like, honestly, what they have done. You know, when people say go to London, they say, hey, you have to watch from people who snatch your phone, your watch. Nobody said you're going to be killed by Palestine Action, the Felton 24. We didn't hear that. So I think the government actually, or the government now are actually legalizing or using the terror policies to terror citizens. And we all must stand, because it's not against you. 15 years. And that terror word destroy our life completely until today. Today, I had a meeting with someone came to talk to me that I was reported for my actions by some embassies. Just, you know, so the Felton 24, also what I have seen in the prison, they're being targeted by the prison system. They are being harassed. They are being indefinitely in prison. To what extent? So what's next? Are they going to call tomorrow for torture program at the CIA called enhanced interrogation technique? Are these torture program will be implemented in the UK? This was going to happen tomorrow. Trust me, step by step. So please stand up, take action. Cage has been calling for the last 23 years. They have been calling and shouting, we need to stop, we need to stand out, we need to fight for justice. So please, I'm asking you today, do not let them starve alone. Support them, you know, fight for, they were saving lives. Today, our duty to free them and save their lives. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, Claire.
Thank you so much, Mansour. And finally, before we go to questions, so please do, just a reminder that this is a press conference, so we will take questions from journalists. And if you can put your name and the name of your publication in the chat with your question, that would be great. And finally, before we go to your questions, we have a short video contribution from the former Shadow Chancellor and Labour MP, John McDonnell, who couldn't be with us in person today as he has a prior commitment to speak at a PCS union strike rally. Over to John. Hoping that his video will come up very soon. If not, we can come. Here we go.
I voted against the prescription of Palestine Action because I believed it was a misuse of the existing legislation to prescribe a protest group as a terrorist organization. I'm very concerned also about the arrest of so many people simply for holding up a placard. But most of all, I'm really worried about the way in which the Palestine Action activists who were arrested last year could be in prison on remand up to 2 years before they're brought before the courts. I believe that they should be released. I don't believe they will be a flight risk. I believe they need to ensure that they have full access to all the paperwork and documentations, particularly with regard to Elbit Systems, who they were protesting against, so that they can make their case in court. But I am concerned as well, because the prescription of Palestine Action took place after they were arrested. I believe that action by the government, plus the media coverage, will mean that they risk not having a fair trial. That's why I believe the government should think again about the way in which they've acted over this matter. I would urge the government to lift the prescription, end the prosecutions, and make sure that in future we are treating protest as a civil liberty, a basic human right, and not an act of terrorism.
I'm sorry about the quality of the video there, but I think John's message got through loud and clear. So we're now coming to questions. The first question is from Henry Vaughan from Sky News. How many people have signed up to take part in the 18 actions? And I'm imagining that's either for you, Clive, or Francesca.
So they said the 18 actions. Is that not the
No,
defense juries? Sorry.
to take part in. So this is the actions across the cities.
I think this is one for me.
Okay.
So there's a number already appeared in the chat. So 1,500 has appeared in the chat. We have to remember with these numbers, it is we have people every day coming forward to us and saying that they can't stand what is happening, either in terms of the repression of free speech, or in terms of the government's complicity with genocide, or indeed with both. And it's important to point out that this is happening across all 4 of the nations within the country, within Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and England, happening at multiple locations. It's not a Defend Our Juries choice as to those locations. People are stepping forward to us and saying, I want to organise something in my locality. So that's an indication of the numbers and the strength of support. I hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Clive. And just a follow-up question from Ricky at Real Media, which is, do you expect a different response in the different regions? Obviously, we've seen the police in Scotland behaving very differently from the police in England.
We absolutely do expect different responses in different locations. What we've come to understand over the course of these protests is there is a political element to the policing. Within Police Scotland, they took the attitude that the primary goal was to ensure public safety. And so when they sent police officers along, the police officers who came along, they were there in order to ensure that the protesters were safe and the general public were safe. And they didn't carry out any arrests at all. They are trying to identify people afterwards with some mixed success. What we found in London was the opposite end of the scale. It's really a masochistic approach from Sir Mark Rowley, who is as much politician as he is police officer. He has thrown huge amounts of resources at arresting every single person. We've seen officers from all across the country. I think the furthest away that we've seen is officers from Northern Ireland who came down to London and then were carrying out arrests on behalf of Met Police. And what I would say to the people of London is, while Sir Mark Rowley is spending your money, and it is London residents' money, on bringing in people from Devon and Cornwall, from Hertfordshire, from Essex, from West Midlands, from Northern Ireland, down to London in order to do that policing. Surely that means he doesn't have the money to police the priorities that people have been told will be policed. And I think it's for the people of London to call Sir Mark Rowley to account. Across the country, other police constables are now going to have that same choice. Are you going to go for the masochistic model of Met Police, or are you going to go for something more reasonable? And we'll see how things progress.
Thanks so much, Clive. Next, we'll come to a question from Sonia Gallego from Al Jazeera, who is asking about examples of how prisoners are being mistreated and censored and what kind of punishments they're being given. I don't know if either Claire or Francesca. Claire, go for it.
Yeah, I can give some examples. It's really wide-ranging. Mail is being withheld. They're being treated very differently to the other non-political prisoners. My daughter's had 42 pieces of post withheld from her. She's had numerous books, including books sent to her from John McDonnell MP, not allowed to have them. They've at times tried to keep co-defendants separate under a non-association order, which, by the way, is usually used for high security prisoners, leading to absolute chaos in HMP Bronzefield, where my daughter is, because there are so many of them there. And they've tried to restrict their rights to have visits, which is against prison law. At one point, for a few days, they took away the visits facility altogether on the pods that they use to book their visits. My daughter complained, and the head of security, who hilariously is called Yasmin Cooper, came to see her in her cell and said, "We can take your visiting rights away and we can put them back, and we do not have to tell you why." They've also been handed out arbitrary punishments. Two of them were thrown into effectively solitary confinement. It has a different name, but it's solitary confinement. One of them for 4 days, no toothbrush, no change of clothes, no bedding, just thrown into a cell with minimum, it was unlocked to maybe half an hour a day. It's just, there's just a very sort of repressive, different approach taken to them to the other prisoners. And maybe Francesca can think of other examples, but those are ones that immediately come to mind.
And Francesca, alongside that, I wonder whether you want to take in Catherine Hurst from the Middle East Eyes question about likely responses from the prison to the hunger strike.
Yes, first of all, I can give a couple more examples. I think Claire explained a lot of things very well. I think it's important to highlight the Islamophobia that's prevalent in a lot of this mistreatment as well. And I will say that that's something that's widespread throughout the prison system and throughout our society at the moment, unfortunately. So we've seen incidents of people's hijabs being forcibly removed, both the prisoners and the visitors as well, which is against the rules. A very recent incident in which one of the prisoners was attacked by prison guards and forcibly strip searched after doing the Muslim call to prayer. So just a couple of examples. There's many, many more, but we can see that it's a constant issue. So as for the government response, it's really difficult for us to predict because this is an unprecedented situation, really. There hasn't been this kind of collective hunger strike on these islands for 30 years, I think, since the IRA and Bobby Sands did theirs. Obviously, we're not comparing ourselves to them, but because it's so unprecedented, we have no idea. I think an indication is that we had no reply from the Home Office from our letter. And I imagine that they will try and ignore this in the beginning until it becomes impossible for them to ignore. Very similar to Defend Our Juries, I think. Whatever happens, we are prepared for any outcome. I think that's something we really want to transmit to everybody. And we will keep fighting and escalating until we get the response we want, which is to fulfill these demands.
Thank you, Francesca. And then Lizzie Dearden from the New York Times is asking whether there is a total number for Section 13 arrests at Defend Our Juries protest so far. So she's got the figures for London, but is there a national figure, Clive?
We know that over 2,000 people have been arrested. I think we're up to we're over 100 people who have been charged. And I have seen myself the absolute chaos this is creating within magistrates' courts. An example of how this has moved the whole system. Westminster Magistrates Court was the only magistrates court I'm not sure if it's in London or in the country, to be able to handle terrorism charges. They now had to designate an additional magistrates court because they realised that if they continued the way they were, the only charges that Westminster Magistrates Court would be dealing with would be lift the ban, Section 13 charges. So it is just on a completely different level to everything we've seen before.
Thanks, Clive. Patrick Hill from the Daily Mirror. Will all 33 prisoners being held on remand for Palestine-related actions be going on hunger strike? And how long will each hunger strike last?
Yes, so what we can say now is not all the people that are in prison right now will be taking part on the hunger strike for various different reasons. Some of them are about to go to trial, for example. We can't confirm the actual number of people that are taking part in the hunger strike for their own safety, as I mentioned previously. And again, for the safety of the prisoners, we can't talk about how long that's going to last. But I'm sure that they will continue for as long as it takes for these demands to be met, as I said previously.
Thanks so much. And now Asa Winstanley at Electronic Intifada. Can we have an update on Huda's legal challenge to the Palestine Action ban? How soon do we know how soon the court is likely to rule after the 27th of November? And what does Huda believe the chances of success are? Clive?
So there was an appeal from the government. It was quite a farcical thing. The government was saying that there is a mechanism that Parliament have put in place to deprescribe an organisation. And at one point, the government lawyer even said it would be okay if people were prosecuted and convicted. And then this committee, which would take months, later on said no, they shouldn't have been prescribed. But the prosecutions would then still stand. The Court of Appeal threw that out and added 2 additional grounds, which are now going to go into the appeal. That will start on the 25th through to the 27th. Having those 2 additional grounds means that we've got 4 grounds that appeal is going through on, which provides you with a substantially higher chance of that resulting in a successful outcome. We expect that around January next year is when we'll hear the result from that. It is a finger in the air because you never know when the judges will have done all of their thinking and all the research that they need to do. But that's a kind of guideline figure that people within the judicial community are working to.
Thanks. And I know that Huda is on the call, so I don't know if she wants to say something, but if she does, please unmute. We hope to be getting a comment from Juliet Stevenson later today when she's feeling a bit better, and that will go out on the WhatsApp broadcast group for Defend Our Juries. So do keep an eye across that. And I think we have reached the end of questions. Does anyone else have a final question? And is there anything that any of the panel would like to add to what's already been said before we close? I do just want to thank everyone for giving their time and their attention to this really important story. We're
I would like to
grateful.
add one thing.
Huda is here. So should we just let Huda speak quickly?
Yeah. Hi everyone. Yeah, thank you for the question. As Clive so brilliantly said, because of the appeal, because the government decided to appeal, that led to us cross appealing. And so not only did they lose their appeal, but we also gained more grounds, which effectively doubles our chances of winning the judicial review in November. So we are hopeful that the judges will come to the right decision, and it's potential. It could happen that we are, if it goes our way, that we are deprescribed by Christmas, hopefully.
So much. So yeah, Mansour, did you want to say something?
Yeah, like my message is to the media, please guys, give voice and space to the hunger strikers. This is really, really important because this is to get the message across. We spent years and years in Guantanamo trying to get our voice, our message to the world outside. So please give them space, give them a voice, and help them in their fight for justice. Simple message. Thank you.
Thank you, Mansour. And just to follow up on that and say thank you to all of you who are here and who are covering the story. We really appreciate the integrity of your journalism in doing that. So thank you. And thanks to everyone who spoke on the panel, and go well. We will be back in touch when we have more news to give you. Thank you.